As you guys probably saw, Colorado and Coach Prime played against North Dakota State this past week. There were a lot of people that had the Buffaloes on upset watch for this one, and honestly, including myself, I thought Colorado would have a run for their money in this one. At the end of the day though, Colorado did end up beating North Dakota State 31-26 after a North Dakota State Hail Mary attempt fell short. While Colorado did end up winning, the Buffaloes honestly didn't really impress anybody on their way there, and it really feels like to me that Travis Hunter is going to do all the heavy lifting for the Buffaloes this season, and there's still a long way for Colorado to go. But what happened during the game, and why do I think it's not surprising that Colorado struggled against North Dakota State? Well, today we're going to examine that. We're going to talk about the preseason expectations, talk about the game itself, and why I think Colorado honestly hasn't changed that much from last year. But before you call me a hater, I'm trying to do this in the most objective way possible, and if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Colorado's Week 1 game against North Dakota State. So let's start with the Buffaloes first. They've been a huge media darling this whole offseason, and honestly for the last 2 years, and the new college football game definitely didn't help them by making them seem like one of the best teams in college football this year. If you look at the final score, it may not seem like it was all offense, but it actually was. Shedeur Sanders did most of the work for the offense in Pat Shurmur's new scheme, as he threw for 445 yards and 4 touchdowns, and had a really bad random interception. He also had 198 yards and a touchdown to Jimmy Horn Jr. and 132 yards and 3 touchdowns for Travis Hunter. If you take those two out of the game, Shedeur threw for 115 yards. Those were too much for the Bison to handle on defense, but they were more than capable of handling Colorado's running offense. They got Ohio State transfer Dallin Hayden in the portal, and he was only able to run for 20 yards on 9 carries. For comparison, Dylan Edwards, who was on the roster last season, is currently a backup for Kansas State, and put up 43 yards and a touchdown on just 5 carries for the Cats. Shedeur, as a pocket passing quarterback, ran for 17. So, it really does seem like the Buffaloes will be an air raid team this season, and they will need to put up points against some good defenses in the Big 12, like KU and Oklahoma State. They'll also need to get better on defense, since the Bison were able to put up almost 300 passing yards and 157 rushing yards. Cam Miller, their quarterback, averaged 12.6 yards per passing attempt with a touchdown through the air, and he also put up 80 yards with 2 touchdowns on the ground. There are also some worries as to if Travis Hunter can keep up the high level that he's been playing. If you somehow don't know by now, he plays both receiver and corner, and eventually some worry he's going to crack at one of them. We'll just have to wait and see, but the guy is truly a generational athlete. He let up only 18 receiving yards on the defensive side of the ball. The defensive line for Colorado struggled, and even though they finished the game with 7 tackles for loss and 2 sacks, there wasn't much significant pressure up the middle, and Cam Miller kinda could do whatever he wanted for the most part. Big-time edge rusher Deion Haynes only had 5 total tackles, and did not even get a sack. There are a lot of mobile quarterbacks who can extend plays on Colorado's schedule this season. Their defense just didn't look ready for the season to start in general, as they got dominated in time of possession by almost 13 minutes of game time, and especially early on, they could not figure out a way to get off the field. Obviously, there were a couple things that they did that really stuck out to me. Shedeur was still chucking up long passes to try to score at the end of the day, when all he had to do was hand the ball off or even take a knee to run out the clock. With less than 2 minutes left, he tried to throw that long ball to LaJohntay Webster and ended up missing. It was a bad look anyways, and add that to the post-game presser when Sanders said his son was a nice guy for it. He said, quote, "Shedeur's such a good kid, sometimes it costs him. That's his character," and I'm like, come on dog, not right now. It's not time to be the good guy right now, it's time to put this away. I'm not sure what about trying to score when all you need to do is run out the clock is being a nice guy to anyone, but Coach Sanders sees it there somewhere. There was also a late hit from Shiloh Sanders in the second quarter, and that was a pretty obvious flag. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether or not a player did something on purpose, but the general consensus from the college football world is that he played a little dirty. He played after the whistle a few times, shoving a few Bison players, and overcommitted on a few running plays. It's definitely a Travis Hunter-led defense at this point. There was also a missed targeting call late in the game that a lot of people called out, where Cam Miller threw a pass to Braylon Henderson at midfield with just over 43 seconds left on the clock. This would have given them an opportunity to win, and he was tackled by Colorado safety Colton Hood, who looked like he led with the crown of the helmet, which could have been looked at for targeting and put the Bison in a better position to come back and win. Obviously, it's impossible to say what would have happened if the call gone through, but a lot of people felt like the refs robbed North Dakota State of a chance to at least try. Later on, Coach Sanders said, quote, "You ever feel like you won but you didn't win? Let's move on from that. I'm going to try to do my best to hold back the anger, but we got a W, so I'm happy." Also, I have to clarify, beating North Dakota State is not a bad win. They arguably are still the top FCS program and have given many Power 5 schools fits. It was a trap game, and North Dakota State had everything to gain and nothing to lose from this. Of course, they got their best shot, and the fact that Colorado held on was pretty impressive. But they've also been falling off a little bit. They ended up losing the title to South Dakota State, and they also went 8-3 with all their losses coming in the Missouri Valley. Colorado is actually a 10.5 betting favorite to win this game, so if you bet that line, you actually lost. That being said though, NDSU is still currently ranked as the number 2 FCS team in the nation, so they're obviously very talented. But also, Oklahoma State just played the number 1 team in the FCS and won by way more. That was South Dakota State. So what does this performance tell me about the rest of the season? Well, honestly, not much good. But in a lot of ways, not much bad either. Tons of teams struggle with FCS teams early on, especially when those FCS teams have the same level of bulletin board material that the Bison did. Colorado players talked massive amounts of trash months before the season even started, so that's why there was a huge spotlight on this game. On top of that, even with all the high-level talent that Colorado has, they're being led by a guy at head coach in Deion Sanders, who is definitely a big media talking point, and they also lost their offensive coordinator Sean Lewis to San Diego State, and now they have Pat Shurmur, and everything's a work in progress. Line depth was a concern for them for months, and it looks like that's still a problem, especially on the interior. You have to remember that Colorado went 3-9 last season, mostly because they didn't have any good depth at key positions, and Deion made a few coaching mistakes during games that didn't end up too well. Yeah, Shedeur threw for over 30 touchdowns, but he was sacked a ton because of poor offensive line play, and that continued this last game. If anything, they got worse at developing in the run game, since Dallin Hayden, who was a big-time recruit, didn't really see much success. But the air raid style of offense seems to be working for them in general. On defense, Colorado was able to rotate a lot of guys at edge rusher that are extremely talented, but they only got 2 sacks to show for it. Coach Sanders had the Buffaloes go for it on 4th down instead of punting at a really weird time, which gave the Bison the football on their own side of the field, which is a weird coaching mistake. Honestly, what's next for Colorado? Well, they'll play Nebraska this week, and it definitely looks like it'll be a step up in competition from North Dakota State. While Nebraska's had plenty of memes over the last few years, I do think Coach Rule is slowly building a program there, and Dylan Raiola versus Shedeur Sanders is definitely going to be must-watch TV. These are 2 of the biggest names in media going head-to-head, so I'm definitely looking forward to this. The Huskers put up 40 points on the UTEP Miners and ran for over 223 yards. Raiola looked pretty solid in that game, so it's definitely going to be a game to watch for me. Obviously, Nebraska is another team that struggled last season as they are just starting their rebuild, but it'll be a good test to see which direction both of these programs are heading in. Colorado has the star power to win games in the Big 12, they just need to be consistent and get more out of the players on their roster who aren't stars. But when your coach is constantly sending guys to the bench or to the transfer portal instead of hyping them up to get better, it's no wonder that the next man up mentality doesn't really exist yet in Colorado. That could hurt them in the future, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but Colorado still has to figure out some of their culture issues, and Deion is still adjusting to be a head coach in this kind of spotlight. Sometimes his antics can get a little bit annoying, but at the end of the day, he's a good guy who seems to care about his players and wants to win. We'll have to wait and see if it'll ever translate and how all those depth pieces will be built and developed, but for now, Colorado doesn't look much different than last year. The offensive line still sucks, the culture still is very interesting, and they're still getting most of their production from the same star players as last year. As I said though, we'll have to wait and see. If you're a college football fan or a Colorado fan, what did I get right and wrong in this video, and how do you think Colorado will do the remainder of the season? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.